I'm so happy you're here today for another deep dive into the teachings of A Course in Miracles. We're continuing our journey through Chapter 16, The Forgiveness of Illusions, and today we're exploring Section 3, The Reward of Teaching. And I want to start by asking you something. When was the last time you thought of yourself as a teacher? Maybe never, right? Maybe you don't see yourself that way at all. Maybe you think teaching is something other people do, people who stand in front of classrooms, people who have students, people who've somehow earned the right to teach. But here's what the Course is about to show us. You're already teaching. Right now, in this moment, you're teaching constantly in every thought you think, every word you speak, every action you take, every reaction you have. You can't not teach. It's impossible. The only question is, what are you teaching? And that question matters more than you might realize, because according to the Course, whatever you teach, you're also learning. Not eventually. Not someday, when the lesson sinks in. Right now. Simultaneously. Teaching and learning are the same process. This is radical. This turns everything we think we know about education, about personal growth, about spiritual development, completely upside down. Because we've been taught that learning comes first, and then, maybe, if we've learned enough, if we've mastered enough, if we've become wise enough, then we can teach. The Course says no. The Course says you teach what you want to learn. You teach what you need to strengthen in yourself. You teach in order to learn, not after you've learned. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The reward of teaching isn't what we think it is. The world tells us that the reward of teaching is recognition, gratitude, respect, maybe even financial compensation. The world tells us that when we teach, we give something away, and if we're lucky, we get something back. But the Course is teaching something completely different. The reward of teaching isn't something that comes from outside ourselves. It's not something others give us. The reward is the learning itself. The reward is the strengthening of truth within our own minds. The reward is becoming what we're teaching. Think about what this means. When you teach love, you strengthen love in yourself. When you teach forgiveness, you deepen your own capacity to forgive. When you teach peace, you become more peaceful. It's not that, you're pretending to have what you don't have until you finally get it. It's that the very act of teaching it, of extending it, of choosing to see it in others, makes it real in you. You can't teach something without learning it. It's impossible. But the opposite is also true, and this is the uncomfortable part. When you teach attack, even subtly, even unconsciously, you're learning attack. When you teach separation, when you teach fear, when you teach guilt or blame or judgment, you're strengthening those things in yourself. Every time you see someone as guilty, you're teaching yourself that guilt is real. Every time you attack, even in your mind, even in your secret thoughts, you're teaching yourself that attack is justified. And you're learning what you're teaching. So in this section, we're going to explore this profound principle. Teaching is learning. Learning is teaching. And they happen simultaneously. We're going to look closely at what we're actually teaching in our daily lives, often without realizing it. And we're going to discover what the true reward of teaching really is, not recognition or gratitude or anything external, but the transformation of our own minds through the very act of extending truth. This matters. This matters because once you understand this, you can never again think of yourself as powerless. You can never again think that what you do doesn't matter, that your thoughts don't have consequences, that your inner life is separate from the world you experience. You're teaching constantly, and what you teach, you learn. What you extend, you strengthen. This is Chapter 16, Section 3. This is the reward of teaching. Let's discover what that truly means. Let's start with something that's going to challenge everything you've been taught about how learning works. We've all been raised with a very specific model. First you learn, then you apply what you've learned, and maybe eventually, if you've mastered it well enough, you can teach it to someone else. Learning comes first. Teaching comes later. They're separate processes, separate stages, happening at different times. The Course completely dismantles this idea. It tells us that teaching and learning are not separate at all. They're the same process. They happen simultaneously. In fact, the Course goes even further. It tells us that you teach in order to learn. Not after you've learned, not once you've figured it out. You teach what you want to learn. You teach what you need to strengthen in yourself. Teaching is how learning happens. Think about what this means in practical terms. When you choose to see someone with compassion, you're not just being nice to them. You're teaching yourself compassion. You're strengthening compassion in your own mind. When you choose to forgive someone, you're not just releasing them from your judgment. You're teaching yourself that forgiveness is possible, that guilt isn't real, that the past doesn't have to define the present. You're learning forgiveness by teaching it. And here's the crucial part. This works whether you realize it or not. You're always teaching. You can't turn it off. Every interaction, every thought, every reaction is teaching something. When you react with anger, you're teaching yourself that anger is justified. When you hold on to grievances, you're teaching yourself that separation is real. When you see yourself as a victim, you're teaching yourself that you're powerless. The learning happens automatically because teaching and learning are one. This is why the Course places so much emphasis on responsibility. Not guilt, not blame, but responsibility. Because once you understand that you're constantly teaching yourself through what you extend to others, you realize you have a choice. You can choose what you want to teach. And in choosing what you teach, you're choosing what you learn. You're choosing what becomes strengthened in your mind. This is incredibly empowering, but it's also uncomfortable. Because it means we can't blame our circumstances for what we're experiencing. We can't say, I'll be peaceful when the world becomes peaceful. We have to teach peace first. We can't say, I'll forgive when they deserve it. We have to teach forgiveness first, and in teaching it, we learn it. The external doesn't determine the internal. The internal creates the external. The Course is very clear about this. You cannot give what you don't have, but it's equally clear that you strengthen what you have by giving it. It's a circle. You teach love, and in teaching it, you deepen your understanding of love. You teach truth, and in teaching it, truth becomes more real in your experience. You teach forgiveness, and in teaching it, you're freed from your own guilt. This is the foundation of everything that follows in this section. Teaching is learning. Learning is teaching. They're inseparable. And the quality of our lives, the depth of our peace, the strength of our connection to truth, all of it depends on what we're choosing to teach in every moment. So the question becomes, what are you teaching right now? So now we need to get really honest with ourselves, because if teaching and learning are the same thing, if we're constantly teaching through every thought and action, then we need to look closely at what we're actually teaching. And I'm telling you right now, this can be uncomfortable, because we like to think of ourselves as good people, as loving people, as people who want the best for others. But what are we actually teaching moment to moment? Let's look at an ordinary day. You wake up and immediately start thinking about everything you have to do, everything that's wrong, everything that needs fixing. What are you teaching yourself in that moment? You're teaching that there's something lacking, that you're not enough as you are, that peace is something you'll have later, after you've handled all the problems. You're teaching scarcity. You're teaching that the present moment isn't okay. You get into your car and someone cuts you off in traffic. Your immediate reaction is anger, maybe some choice words under your breath, maybe just a surge of irritation. What are you teaching in that moment? You're teaching that attack is justified when you feel wronged. You're teaching that other people can disturb your peace. You're teaching that you're a victim of circumstances beyond your control. And here's the thing. You're not just teaching the other driver. You're teaching yourself. You're reinforcing those beliefs in your own mind. You scroll through social media and see something that triggers you. Maybe it's political. Maybe it's personal. Maybe it's just someone living their life in a way you disagree with. You judge. You criticize. Maybe you don't comment. Maybe you keep it to yourself. But the judgment is there. What are you teaching? You're teaching separation. You're teaching that some people are right and some are wrong, some are good and some are bad. Some deserve love and some don't. You're teaching division, and every time you teach it, you learn it more deeply. This is the uncomfortable truth. Most of us are teaching fear and separation constantly without even realizing it. Not because we're bad people, but because we've been trained by the ego. We've learned the ego's curriculum so well that it runs automatically. Attack, defend, judge, compare, protect, control. These are the ego's lessons, and we teach them dozens of times a day through our thoughts, our reactions, our interpretations of what we see. But here's the crucial part. In every single one of those moments, there's a choice. Every moment is an opportunity to teach something different. When you wake up, you could choose to teach gratitude. When someone cuts you off in traffic, you could choose to teach peace. When you see something on social media that triggers you, you could choose to teach understanding, or at least neutrality. This doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect. It doesn't mean bypassing genuine feelings or forcing positivity. It means recognizing that you have a choice about what you're reinforcing in your mind. Are you teaching love or fear? Are you teaching union or separation? Are you teaching that you're a victim or that you're powerful? Are you teaching that the world is against you or that you're part of something whole? The Course says we're teaching constantly. Every thought is a lesson we're teaching ourselves. Every perception is a curriculum we're choosing. So the question isn't whether you're teaching. The question is, what are you teaching? And more importantly, is it what you want to learn? So we've established that we're always teaching, and we've looked at what we're actually teaching in our daily lives. Now let's talk about the reward. Because this is where everything comes together, and this is where the Course offers us something the world can never give. The world tells us that the reward of teaching comes from outside. It's the gratitude of students, the recognition from peers, the satisfaction of seeing someone succeed because of what you taught them. It's applause, appreciation, acknowledgement. And there's nothing wrong with those things. But the Course is pointing to something much deeper, something that doesn't depend on anyone else's response at all. The true reward of teaching is this: you become what you teach, not eventually. Not after. Years of practice. Immediately. In the very act of teaching it. When you teach love, you experience love. When you teach peace, you know peace. When you teach forgiveness, you are forgiven. The reward is built into the teaching itself. This is completely different from how we usually think about giving. We think that when we give something away, we have less of it. If I give you money, I have less money. If I give you my time, I have less time. The ego operates on this principle of scarcity. But truth doesn't work that way. Truth multiplies when it's shared. Love increases when it's given. Peace deepens when it's extended. Think about it practically. You're having a difficult day. You're stressed, anxious, caught up in worry. And then someone reaches out to you with their own struggle. You could see this as an interruption, another burden, another thing draining your limited resources. Or you could see it as an opportunity to teach peace. Not by pretending you're not struggling, but by choosing to extend peace anyway, by offering understanding, by being present. And here's what happens. In the very act of teaching peace to that person, you experience peace yourself. Not because you've solved your own problems, but because you've remembered that peace is what you are. You've strengthened it in yourself by extending it. The reward is immediate. The reward is the teaching itself. This is the circle that the Course talks about constantly. Giving and receiving are one. What you give, you have. What you teach, you learn. Not as some kind of karmic transaction where good deeds are eventually rewarded, but as a present reality. The extension is the strengthening. The teaching is the learning. And this is why it matters so much what we choose to teach. Because we're not just affecting others. We're literally creating our own experience. When you teach attack, you experience yourself as attacked. When you teach guilt, you experience yourself as guilty. When you teach separation, you experience yourself as alone. But when you teach love, when you teach wholeness, when you teach forgiveness, you experience those things as your reality. The reward isn't something that comes later. The reward isn't dependent on whether the other person receives what you're teaching. The reward is that in choosing to teach truth, you're choosing to experience truth. In choosing to extend love, you're choosing to know yourself as love. In choosing to see wholeness, in another, you're remembering your own wholeness. This is the gift the Course is offering us. We don't have to wait for the world to change before we can experience peace. We don't have to wait for others to love us before we can know love. We teach what we want to learn, and in teaching it, we have it. That's the reward, and it's available in every single moment. So here we are, at the end of our exploration of the reward of teaching, and I hope you're seeing yourself differently now. Because what we've discovered today is profound. You're not just a student on this spiritual path. You're not just someone passively receiving teachings and hoping they'll eventually sink in. You're a teacher, right now, in every moment. And what you teach, you learn. What you extend, you strengthen. What you give, you have. Let's remember what we've covered. We started by understanding that teaching and learning are not separate processes. They happen simultaneously, and you teach in order to learn, not after you've learned. We looked honestly at what we're actually teaching in our daily lives, recognizing that every thought, every reaction, every judgment is a lesson we're teaching ourselves. And finally, we discovered the true reward, that in the very act of teaching truth, we experience truth. The reward isn't external. The reward is becoming what we teach. This changes everything, because it means you're not powerless. You're not at the mercy of circumstances or other people, or a chaotic world. In every moment, you have a choice about what you're teaching. And in choosing what you teach, you're choosing what you experience. You're choosing what becomes real in your mind. The ego will resist this. It will tell you that your thoughts don't matter, that what happens inside your mind is separate from what happens in the world, that you can think whatever you want as long as you act appropriately. But that's not true. Your thoughts are teaching you. Your interpretations are teaching you. Your reactions are teaching you. And you're learning what you're teaching, whether you realize it or not. So the practice is simple, though not always easy. Become aware of what you're teaching. In each moment, in each interaction, in each thought that crosses your mind, ask yourself, what am I teaching right now? Am I teaching love or fear? Union or separation? Peace or conflict? Wholeness or lack? And if you don't like the answer, choose again. Choose to teach what you want to learn. Choose to extend what you want to experience. Thank you so much for being here today, for taking this journey with me through Chapter 16, Section 3 of A Course in Miracles. If this resonated with you, if you're beginning to see yourself as a teacher and recognizing the power in that, please hit that like button. It helps spread these teachings to more people who are ready for them. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. We're continuing through the course together, uncovering these life-changing principles section by section. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Share it with someone who's feeling powerless, someone who's waiting for the world to change, someone who's ready to understand that they're teaching and learning simultaneously in every moment. Leave a comment below and let me know how this teaching is shifting your awareness. I love hearing from you and knowing that we're walking this path together. Until next time, remember, you are a teacher. What you teach, you learn. What you extend, you strengthen. What you give, you have. Choose wisely what you're teaching because you're becoming it. See you in the next video.